But you had asked her not to speculate.
Yes, I said she shouldn't, and she didn't. Come on. You know, it's interesting the way things are playing out.
In politics, anything can happen. 5 minutes are even a long time in politics.
I thought you were going to say 24 hours.
No, that's too long. That's too long.
Okay, well, that's that. I guess, you know, that's part of the things that we may be speaking to today. You want to talk to us about the politics of zoning? Because, okay, I'm not saying anything. Let's welcome Fred Nzako, who is Secretary General Movement for Nigeria's Restructuring, and he is a legal practitioner as well. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Many thanks. Good to be with you. Good morning.
Yeah,
Good morning.
you know, the controversy over political zoning has been a bone of contention quite significantly in the political landscape for some time. And there are questions as to whether or not it has any merit or demerit. There are those who point at the Constitution as referencing it directly or indirectly, you know. So the question then would be, first of all, of what significance is the politics of zoning in our electoral landscape?
One thing, the significance revolves around one thing, inclusion. Inclusion. And when you say inclusion, you recall that it has historical origin. In 1914, following the amalgamation of the North and the South to form Nigeria, and Nigeria had always been working on that issue of North and South, and it has always been there. Even our laws recognize there is that fusion, and there's need for that fusion to really happen, and then as we march on towards a nation state. And in order to ensure that there's this inclusion, we included the federal character principle even in our constitution, so that nobody is left behind. Now, it has always been this idea of North and South. In order to kill the idea of tribes, because at a point in Nigeria's political development, we had challenges of tribal sentiments and tribal inclinations. But following the 1994 Constitutional Conference, the idea of, 1998 conference, sorry, the idea of tribe was downplayed by the 6th geopolitical zonal arrangement. Even though it has not been brought into our constitution formally, but Nigeria has found out that we work on the arrangement of the 6 geopolitical zones. Yet, following the recognition of North and South. And that is why you have 3 zones in the North and 3 zones in the South. And that has essentially achieved a lot in terms of downplaying the issue of tribe. And now we are now talking about the issue of zoning. So if you look at...
really, my apologies, do you think it really downplayed the issue of tribe or ethnic sentiment?
To a very large extent, because if you recall when we were only talking about, during the era of MPN, MPP, and UPN, it was essentially a tripod based on 3 tribal and ethnic regions. The MPN was treating more towards the north, the MPP was treating more towards the east, and the UPN was treating more towards the west. And of course, you have over 300 tribes in Nigeria, speaking over 350 languages. So how do you now make sure that there is inclusion? So that wisdom of geopolitical zonal arrangement was a very good masterstroke that has not been defeated up to today. And that is why when we talk about restructuring, we talk about even political and geographical restructuring in terms of, instead of having 36 states, for example, why not we have 6 states? But that's a story for another day, because we're talking about zoning now. And that zoning has now always been, the pendulum has always been swinging between north and south. But zoning as a policy, I must say quickly, is not a national policy. It's a policy of political parties.
Well, Mr. Zako,
yes.
If we had zoning as a national policy, taking the 6 geopolitical zones,
yes,
would that be such a bad thing? So everybody would understand that the office would go from zone to zone, from zone 1 to zone 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 and to 6. So there's no squabbling and there's no quarrel. You just wait for your turn.
Absolutely.
Because it will be your turn.
Absolutely.
Because there are 6 zones.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be a good thing?
That would be a wonderful thing. And that is why we keep advocating for restructuring. But that is when you restructure the polity, because the structure as we have today does not tolerate this seemingly very good arrangement that you have just said. So that the squabbles will be lessened, and then all other issues that tend to be devil our political development would have been taken care of and solved. But we are not even talking about just that. We're talking also about collapsing the structure that we have today from the 36 states whereby many of them cannot even fund themselves to something around 6 administrative zones. If you like, call it region, if you like, call it states, if you like, call it whatever, but let us prune it down from 36 to 6. That way, a lot of money will be released for capital expenses that is needed to move this country forward. Because when you look at in the economics of Nigerian system, almost 70 to 75% in some cases of the budget of each year at both state and federal level go to the current expenses. And government is biggest spender in every economy. If such expenses go to recurrent, so what now do you use to jumpstart the capital project? And that is why we now rely on borrowing. When you now borrow to put in capital projects, it now have a reverberating effect in the long run on the economy, and that is why we are where we are today. So when we talk about restructuring, we are not only talking about issue of true fiscal federalism, we're also looking at geopolitical restructuring that will enhance the economics, the political economy of Nigeria. Now back to zoning. Issue of zoning. You rightly said, why not we rotate it among the 6 geopolitical zones? As we speak today, the pendulum has always been swinging north and south.
Yes.
At least with respect to from 1999, in this current dispensation that we are in, 99 to 2007, south. 2007, going forward, he went to north, and peradventure and accident of death, it came back to south. And it has always been in PDP. Now, the 2 main political parties, PDP and APC, are the ones talking about this issue of zoning. Other lesser parties, with due respect to them,
Other parties.
No, but if I even use the word lesser, I'm not mistaken, because the law says that if any party does not win an election, the party will be delisted. So you cannot compare a party that has produced many governors with a party that has not produced even a member of House of Assembly. But due respect to them, other parties are not worried about zoning. Now, the problem and the challenge we have today is that PDP, the last president of PDP extraction, came from southern Nigeria. PDP, some elements in PDP are now arguing that the next president of PDP extraction, and of course, you must first become a flag bearer before you will now get the assent of the people to become the president, will be of northern extraction. And when you now come to the north, because you have northeast, northwest, and north central, the argument will now be north west has produced president, northeast has not, north central has not. That is a logical argument. And people are now pushing it towards northeast, so that power of inclusion will be there. You now come to the second big party, the APC. The current president is of APC extraction. So it follows that the next flag bearer of APC will be from the south, because the current president is from the north, following the pendulum of north and south. And even when you now think in that direction, the issue of whether it will go to northeast, southeast, southwest, and south remains to be determined by that party called APC. So I think this issue of zoning, as sensitive as it is, has to be understood with a mindset of inclusion with a mindset that it is a party thing. It is not a national consensus. If it were, we would have included it in our constitution. And what my sister Lero is now possibly advocating is that we make it a national consensus such that it keeps moving round. We have 6 geopolitical zones, but Nigeria must recognize these zones in our constitution
Would
first.
you prefer that the lawmakers actually look at this?
I would prefer so. And not just that. I would prefer also that the lawmakers look at collapsing the 30 states. It's a Herculean task.
36 states.
Yes, into 6 administrative states.
Are you prepared to lobby that?
I am prepared. We are doing that already. In the movement for Nigerian restructuring, one of the cardinal things we do in public advocacy and our interaction with the people is to impress it on the leaders of Nigeria that we really need to shrink our bogus bureaucracy. We have to, unless we don't want this country to grow.
I'm a little at a loss when talking about this politics of zoning in the light that you're talking about it, and I'll tell you why. I think it's the Northwest that has 7 states.
Yes, Northwest.
And the Southeast has 5 states.
Yes.
The average there are those who opine it should be 6 states per region.
Per region.
Okay. Now, this is the challenge that we have now. So, how, if you would postulate, would you have that division done? Which state will now jump to be part of the Southeast? Which state will now be delisted from the Northwest?
That is if we maintain the 36-state structure. We want the 36-state structure to be shrunk into 6 administrative structures.
Which politician do you think will agree to that?
Which politician created the 36 states?
But
it was created by human beings and created by the military, who, with due respect to them, have not given it deep economic thought. And possibly they did not know it would go this way. The pressure has been coming from the people. Even under the current dispensation, there are requests for about creation of 20 more states in
that's
Nigeria.
what I was going to ask you.
Does it make sense to anybody?
People are advocating for more states. Every single hamlet would prefer to be
It is because of the natural greed in every human being. Everybody wants to be the lord of the manor. Everybody wants a chiefdom unto himself, not thinking progressively about the future of the country. Look at the way we are today. Where we are today is a sorry situation. So sorry that our debts alone will sweep us off our feet. And what are we leaving for the future generation? We should be talking about productivity and not continuous increment in bogus expenditure through recurrent bills of government.
But this is what you have. This is where we are now.
Yes.
And the whole idea of this conversation is just so people will even understand what the issues are. Because at the end of the day, people are left, okay, to just the choices that the parties have made for them.
Yes.
And it's just at this point
that
we are now, where the delegates, a collegiate of sorts, choose who flag the flag of which party for whatever post that is open in the land.
Yes.
And so the question now is, this politics of zoning, the way you have designed it, it would seem like it's different strokes for each of the political parties. You've talked about, you've analyzed, so to speak, how the PDP would be thinking towards a particular region, and how the APC would be thinking towards a completely different region, especially for those 2 main political parties. And as you said, maybe other parties are not even thinking about it. But the question a number of people will be asking you, Mr. Nzako, is, let me use the street balance. Who's owning EP?
Zoning.
Because at the end of the day, just 1 second, at the end of the day, many people are wondering, look, when you want to get a job in Fred Nzako and Co., it doesn't matter
the tribe of the person.
Tribe or sentiment.
Good.
Competence is what you're looking for.
Competence, fine. Competence, fine. Is there no competent person or people? Are there no competent people in every zone? Are there none?
Which raises the
must
question. Which raises the question,
Yes.
Mr. Zako. Should it matter? Is the question.
You know why it matters, Ayo? It matters because our political development is still very delicate. They call it nascent. I'll stop using the word nascent because we cannot become toddlers for life. We have graduated from being a nascent democratic environment to a delicate democratic environment.
Which is worse.
Which is
worse.
Which makes it imperative that you must include everybody. That sense of belonging is extremely very important.
Do you think
that sense of inclusiveness?
Do you think
if you say you come to my zone and you want to tell me, for example, that there are no competent people in my zone?
No. That's not the point.
Good. Now the point is this: because of the delicate nature of our collective existence in a country called Nigeria, if you don't zone, at least tacitly. Because the current zoning is not a constitutional thing, it's a political understanding among the gladiators and those who are leaders of the people, who in their mindset feel that what is good for the goose is also good for the gander.
You still don't have
when it goes to north, let it come to south.
You haven't answered my
question. Your question is issue of who zoning help. Not be so. It helps everybody. Everybody. Because everybody will have a sense of inclusion.
Okay,
everybody will have a sense of fairness, equity, and judgment.
Let's prod this a little deeper.
Yes.
With these questions are being asked because the one political party is choosing its candidate today. Whether or not the zoning arrangement is going to play a role, we don't know. The delegates have to vote. Choose as they want. Whether or not there is some instruction from wherever, nobody knows.
Of course, you can trust that there will be instructions.
Okay. I don't know because
you are not there, but I can tell you
the question
that there will be instructions.
The angle of the conversation is this. When we had Chief Olusegun Obasanjo as president, it's not that we didn't have issues even in the Southwest. When we had President Goodluck Jonathan in office, it's not that we didn't have issues in the South-South.
Yes.
The president today is from the Northwest.
Yes.
We know what is happening in the Northwest as we speak. So again, I ask, of what benefit is the zoning arrangement when it doesn't in any way place any advantage on that particular region?
We are not even talking about advantage. It's not supposed to be an ultimate advantage to the region or the zone where the president comes from, because he's the president of the country. But that psychological sense of inclusion is very important, because if you juxtapose it with lack of zoning, because if you're only looking at balancing between north and south, what of when there is no such balancing? And the power resides in one place permanently by manipulation anyhow. In other African countries, you begin to ask yourself, how come one man will be in power for 32 years, 35 years? You want to tell me that the people are all happy about it? That is the beauty of democracy. Tenure. Maximum 8 years. Maximum. You must exit. That's the beauty of our current democracy. So if you don't inculcate zoning, the backlash, you must think about it. There's an adage that says, if you think education too cost, try ignorance. If you think that zoning no help anybody, try non-zoning and see what it will.
So obviously you're an advocate of zoning.
I am.
And you mentioned federal character earlier.
Yes.
If federal character is understood and it's in the Constitution, should we not also apply federal character to this matter we're talking about?
The zoning recognizes federal character. As a matter of fact, zoning is built on the principle of federal character. And what is federal character? Federal character is do not allow any particular section of the country to overbear itself, oppress other sections of the country.
Which is one of the elements, one of the principles, objectives of the Constitution.
And that is the foundation upon which zoning is built.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there such zoning in the big economies of the world other than the US and the UK? The Chinas of this world, the Rwandas of this world, which is, I mean, we know, it was just 1994, just about 5 years before we came into this First
Every
Republic.
politics is local. Every people in plural now, every people now determine their fate based on their own experience, and that experience is anchored on their history, their current experience, and where they want to go.
So where does Nigeria want to go?
Nigeria as of today is confused. As of today is confused. And that is why we want and advocate that Nigeria be restructured so that we can get where we want to go. As of today, we are not going to where we want to go. No. And now if we now want to look at other countries and use them as an example, go and also look at their history, their past experience, and where they want to go. That is very destructive.
Switzerland is a relatively small country.
Yes.
But they have zones.
They have zones.
And in those, I mean, the presidency or whatever it is that the prime minister or whoever governs the country, it comes from one zone at a time.
At a time.
And it is understood.
And their own is clearly understood in their law books.
And it is one of the most peaceful countries in the world.
So that is a very strong example of a country that has made use of zoning, so that has worked for them.
Now, we understand federal character, you know, as an element of zoning, just as you have said.
Yes.
It is included in our laws and all of that.
Yes.
So if that is the bedrock of the zoning conversation,
yes,
and it's taken us 23 years to get to where we are, and of course the 1999 Constitution is not brand new in that sense, elements of previous constitutions have made up what we have today.
Absolutely.
What do you think is responsible for us not including zoning? Because this whole political permutation of regions, six geopolitical zone, it came up, I think, during the 1995 political conference under the Abacha government, and that happened. But today, it doesn't seem like we officially recognize it as a country. So what do you think is staving that off?
The will. We call it political will. Even though it has been used over time in all manner of expressions, we call it political will. And it can happen when the people decide to sit together and talk to themselves. We had a conference under Jonathan in year 2014, and all the report of that conference have not seen the light of the day. The conference of 1994-95 under Abacha that you talked about, which Alexei Poeme's minority report was the one that captured this zoning arrangement, and it was put in place. And today, Nigeria is using it, and it is working. And that is why we say, if you see something that is working, why not adopt it and make it a constitutional issue? Then my sister's Alero's advocacy, following Switzerland experience, we now make a lot of meaning.
Do you see that happening?
From zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Do you see that happening?
And the rest.
Because the understanding we have, I mean, as of today, is that the Switzerland example that she gave, for instance, we know who the third president in waiting is.
Yes.
President in waiting in Switzerland. We know who it is already. The country
at least
already
we know
knows
which zone is going to go to.
So, do you see that happening in our nation anytime soon?
That is why we want our people to think and work for the progress of this country. If we don't work towards it, it will not happen. If we work towards it, it will happen. And that is why this recognition of the North and South divide will not go. It will not, because of that amalgamation of 2014. The zoning, the six geopolitical zonal structure has, to a very large extent, mitigated the initial tribal sentiment that we're having in Nigeria, whereby the three major ethnic regions tend to overload it over other minorities. But now, you no longer talk about major and minor. You don't talk about the zone. Wherever it comes to your zone and your people find you very competent, then they will throw you up and bring you out to the rest of the country to lead for leadership. So that balancing of power cannot go so soon. And we don't even want it to go because we are human beings.
But you know, one of the things that I've seen which is making this interesting and important,
yes,
is that it was, for instance, International Children and Youth's Day yesterday.
Yes.
I don't know whether your children disturbed you the way they disturbed them.
Every child will naturally disturb.
Even the one that has had children already.
Fun and enjoy themselves.
Well, you know, in what ways do you think the children are being factored into all of these considerations, political considerations and permutations that we're talking about? In what ways do you think our policies, our politics, our polity is factoring in children and the future into all of our political permutations and postulations?
Unfortunately, I must tell you that not much is being done in terms of the future. Not much. And I'll tell you why. If the adult today is taking a lot of loans that will be paid by the children tomorrow, what are you leaving behind for them?
Debt.
If you, as a father, you are not working towards unity, what are you leaving behind for them? If you are not working towards security of their life, what are you leaving behind for them? When will that tomorrow come? If the youth are leaders of tomorrow, when will their tomorrow come? There is not too young to run matter and all that. No, those are semantics. Those are rhetorics. If you plant yam today and you don't tend it, put it, allow it to climb a stalk, to grow, receive fresh oxygen, and give you adequate tuber under the soil, it will come out with very tiny tuber. Nigeria is not planting and tending their children. They're only planting. The tendering aspect of it is sectional and not adequately covered. Nigerian children and Nigerian youth are not receiving the best from their fathers and mothers of today.
Which raises this other question of concerning this zoning that we're talking about.
Yes.
You know, you talked about inclusion and all.
Yes.
We talk about out-of-school children. We don't even know the exact figures, depending on who you are.
And the figure keeps rising.
So the UN says about 18.5 million.
The UN says 18.5 million. The federal government says maybe 13 million. They also say it's 10 million.
14 million.
In other words, we have at least 10 million children
Not less than
In
that.
a country that says all children must go to school.
To school.
in the Constitution.
Yes.
Please add that.
Yes.
In other words, let me not go there. So how does zoning help to champion the issues, especially the ones that may be peculiar to the specific individuals in each of these regions? There are those who would look at the books, for instance, and say the number of out-of-school children in the north is. I recall former President Olusegun Obasanjo saying that if we do not put these children back in school ASAP, we're already raising an army of terrorists for the future.
Yes.
So the question then again is, how does zoning help to solve our problems forward?
No, Ayo, zoning does not solve such problem. What the problem zoning solves is problem of determination of leadership, so that there won't be cantankerous situation that will cause crisis. When there are crises, don't forget that women and children suffer the most. So anything that will be put in place to ensure that they don't suffer will be appreciated. So that is what zoning does. And when that zoning now, within that zoning structure, you will try to throw up the man or woman that will now further the ideals of governance. Zoning on itself is not the end. It's only a means to the end. The end is good governance. So if without zoning there will be a crisis, why not you adopt zoning? So that you keep away that one leg of crisis that is potential. You now face the other leg, which is how do we deliver good governance to the people so that the children, the youth, and the women will benefit and have beautiful future that you are talking about.
Do you think the delegates who are making the choices from today understand this thing that you're talking about?
Unfortunately, I do not think so. Most unfortunately, I do not think so. I only wish that they will listen and hear us, and then they will think. And thinking in direction of when they are placed with choices, there is what we call between the deep blue sea and the devil. One is better than the other. All right? Because one will give you some life, and one will dismiss the life instantaneously. Now, if you are placed with choices, you now think, which option is best for me? Which option is best for my own children? And that is what we are talking in delegates. Do not only think of which option will increase my bank account. Think of the option that will be best for you today and for your children tomorrow.
Well,
and unfortunately...
Are you not being unfair to these people? Because, I mean, when they, if they think, as you say they should do, and not accept all the perks that are being offered them, they will return to their local governments. And then what happens to them when they get to their local governments?
They'll be asked questions. They should be able to defend their actions.
But that may be the end of their political career.
American democracy started by 13 men locking themselves up to sign that treaty that brought what we have as America today. And by the time they came out, they had already written their wills, ready to die and to be stoned to death by their people. They eventually, at the end of the day, turned out to be celebrated as heroes. We want people who will think in that direction so that this country will get better over time. Today, the delegates are voting. Tomorrow, some other delegates will vote in the other parties, and along the line in between, other parties are throwing up their candidates. At the end of the day, Nigerians will be left with choices presented to them by these delegates who don't even know that they're holding the future of Nigeria in their hands.
You're asking these delegates to die for Nigeria. Would you die for Nigeria?
Alero, it does not warrant them to die.
No, you said they should be prepared to die.
No. I use that as an example of self-sacrifice. Yes, they have to sacrifice some perks and ensure that they vote in the right persons to lead this country. That is the responsibility of the delegates. So that by the time they throw up the candidates, the rest of Nigerians will now make a choice out of the whole lot.
Now that you are saying, now that you said that we should, you know, agree to collapse the 36 states into 6 administrative regions. I'm wondering which 36 men and women or 6 men and women will write their wills and enter into a room. Don't answer that question today, please.
And agree.
And agree. Mr. Fred Nzako, Secretary General, Movement for Nigeria's Restructuring, and he is also a legal practitioner. Thanks so much for joining us.
Many thanks. Many thanks.
Okay. I don't know if Alero is planning to... anyway, we'll be back after now. Please stay with us.
Planning to do what?